Good morning. Thank you all for joining us for this month's Coffee Talk. My name is Sean O'Brien, President of QuickRate. And as always, I'm pleased to be joined by Steve Huntington. Stephen, go ahead and introduce yourself. Oh, you're on mute, Steve.
That I am, Sean. That I am. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on a rainy Friday morning here in Raleigh, at least. My name's Steve Huntington. I'm the Director of Analytics here at QuickRate, and I spent my entire career working with community financial institutions like yours. And I've been working with Sean here at QuickRate for 12 years or so now.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Just a reminder, a couple of things. One, we will send out a link to the recording today, along with a copy of the slides. That'll probably go out Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning. Just a reminder, certainly utilize the Q&A box, excuse me, and the chat function. If you want to submit a question, we'll monitor those during the presentation and certainly take them at a break or towards the end of the presentation. So just a couple of reminders that we all know, but always need to repeat. Again, I think the focus of the coffee talks will probably start to evolve a little bit. I think, here at the a little past the halfway point of 2024, I think all of you congratulatory, our transition to CECL, working through the solver very well, kind of made it part of your normal routine. I think what we want to try to do, going forward is, try to maybe focus in on questions or areas maybe where you think you'd like to see a little bit more support, even if it's outside the tool. And so, we've got a polling question today that'll address that, but I think, we're going to be, certainly trying to find ways to give you more information, more context, again, all designed to continue to make this administration of CECL as seamless and painless as we can make it. To that end, we're going to, start with our polling questions today. We do have one that's actually a fill in the blank, but we'll start with just a couple of polling questions. First one's just around your balances. I'm kind of curious, at June 30th, is your ACL or CECL balance higher than it was at 12/31/23? So we'll just give this a minute or so. Or about the same. I guess that's the third option. I always forget to provide that one. Okay. This is a little bit more interesting. 69% of you balance is higher, which I think is good. 22 about the same, and 8% is not higher. All right, so thank you for participating on that one. Let's go to the next question, just regarding past due loans. Again, are you seeing any increase in your past due loans? Yes, no, or about the same? And this kind of mirrors what we just saw in the previous one. 63% of you are seeing, 27 about the same, 10% are not seeing any. So again, thank you very much. The next question is just on your loan balances. How does your 6/30 loan portfolio balance compare to your 12/31/23 balance? I know at the start of the year, I think there was, while there wasn't an explicit we're slowing lending, I think there was, there wasn't a focus. I think a couple of the recent conferences I've been at, it feels like most institutions feel like they're turning back on the switch and refocusing on growing loans. So just kind of wanted to see if that matched with what I was hearing at these conferences. So we'll go ahead and end this one here and share it. So 47% do have a higher balance, 34% lower, and 18% about the same. And so then the final question, again, is a little bit different. This one is kind of fill in the blank. But as I mentioned at the outset, we do want to focus on if there's areas you'd like to see us provide greater support in your CECL process. We certainly want to look for more topics for the coffee talks. But we'll give this a couple of minutes so you can, if there's anything, and we'll ask it again in future, in coming months. So if you haven't thought of anything today, just be thinking about it as we go forward. Because again, I think we want to continue to make these as helpful as we possibly can. I think that'll be supplemented and aided by any areas of interest or topics that you'd like us all to focus in on. So I know I've been thinking about just more administrative things because the questions that we're hearing, again, we still have things, if a institution's involved in an audit or something like that around validation or how things are calculated. But increasingly, I feel like the conversations I'm having are with institutions who are looking for ways to maybe improve their Q factor process, or discussing this with their board or regulators, or just looking for more support in their Q factors, talking about how they would make changes and document that. And so just want to make sure you feel good about your internal process. And while we can't completely step in there, if there's things that we can provide to help make that administration and communication and discussion and ongoing administration easier, that's what we're really trying to begin to focus a little bit more on than we have. So appreciate we got some responses. We'll take those into account. Again, we'll probably have more questions like this in the coming coffee talks, but certainly appreciate everybody's participation in these this morning. So thank you. Okay, so on to the presentation. So again, just kind of our blanket standard reminder that just some of the enhancements that we've made, a further reminder that these again have been optional, enhancements designed to just try to make the administration easier. Certainly nothing has impacted the way things are calculated, but again, just trying to find ways, again, typically from user feedback, if there's improvements to what we can do in the CECLSolver. Steve, again, we talked about this last month, but I'll let you jump in here on just for the banks, or excuse me, the credit unions who are having their WARMs calculated by us, how they can use the import feature.
Sure. Yeah, and this is something we implemented, I think, about a couple months ago now. We pointed this out on the last coffee talk, but just wanted to reiterate for those of you who haven't seen it yet. If we are calculating your WARMs for you, then you can go as soon as we've sent you back the Excel file, the WARM file, you can go into your scenario, into the CECLSolver, and there's a new button. If you go to the next slide there, at the top of the WARM column on the loan portfolio summary, a big green pre-populate button. You click on that and you'll have a handful of choices, right? The two primary methodologies that the vast majority of our users use for calculating WARMs are either the more conservative approach, where we're just adjusting WARMs for prepayments and not really taking into account amortization, leading to higher WARMs and typically higher reserve levels. Again, that's why it's a more conservative approach. And then also adjusting for amortization as well as prepayments. And that's going to be bring WARMs down a little bit, bring reserves down a little bit. And most of our users are using one of those two, but those values will be there for any dates that you've sent us your loan data to have us calculate your WARMs. If we're not calculating your WARMs, whether you're using our estimator tool in Excel and doing it yourselves, or whether you have a different service or just doing it independently, you'll still be able to use the pre-populate button if you want to see some industry data or peer data. There's two different ways that we can show the WARM data. One is the data coming directly from the NCUA. That's the regulatory study data, option 3 there. And every quarter, the NCUA does that study with a third-party statistical provider and calculates some prepayment values and some WARM values by loan segment for a whole bunch of smaller credit unions around the country, and provides that data, and then we in turn aggregate it and provide it here as well. We also do the calculations ourselves. Since we have so many users using our CECLSolver now, we're able to aggregate all that user data that we get, and we're going to start providing it to you in a lot of different, more helpful ways. Over the last couple of coffee talks, I've shown you a kind of a very large table or chart that tracks warms by segment and Q factors by segment for all the hundreds of users and thousands of scenarios that our users have run using the CECLSolver. So if you'd like to see what all of our user data looks like for warms, you can choose the CECLSolver user data averages. And again, if you're calculating it yourself, and this is just a sanity check or a double check to make sure that the warms, the way you're doing it, kind of meets or is close to the industry best practices for how to do so. Sean?
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
As we, Steve's touched on, I think in a couple of the previous coffee talks, we're going to continue to try to, enhance what you can see. Some of that's involved with some information that's already available to you that you may not be aware of. So we just wanted to, again, point that out here this morning. Steve, do you want to talk this slide, or you want it to go to your live screen?
I think I will go ahead and go to my large screen. Give me just a second here.
So as Steve's doing that, so this is just a screenshot of, again, what he'll show you is available to you already. It just has by each state or region, all the credit unions in there, and you'll be able to see some, high level overview metrics on each of these institutions. So
give me a second. I'm having an issue with trying to get over there. All right, that's right. All right, let me share. Why is that not working? Ah, there we go.
There we go.
All right, excellent. So let's see. Yeah, a couple of these other pages that we've shown in the past, but we continue making enhancements to. One of them is just called the credit unions at a glance. This is a way to just see some typical summary level financial data for other credit unions or peers. If you're curious as to who is in your NCUA peer group, like if, let's say you're using the CECLSolver and you're in California and you're in peer group 5, right, which is $100 to $500 million in assets. So I can click on the state of California here. This is a list of just all the credit unions that are headquartered in the state of California. And if I sort them by assets and I go low to high, I can come in here and see, all right, here are all the credit unions in California that are in I keep saying UB, NCUA peer group 5. So we can get an idea of who they are and how they're performing at any given point in time. So you can kind of scroll around here, look at all the different statistical calculations. You can look at averages and medians and sort by any metric you want to. If you want to get an idea for your state or for your region, these are the 3 regions that the NCUA has kind of reorganized itself around recently. It's just a great kind of quick filtering tool for doing some screening or looking at some basic financial analysis without having to download and import a whole bunch of stuff and create a bunch of custom peer groups or whatnot. You have just a quick list here that you can sort and organize geographically and by performance metric. Anything on that, Sean?
No, just scroll across the bottom one more time, Steve. I wanted to take it across the page. I wanted to see if we had
balance sheet, profitability and earnings.
Yeah,
income,
so
overhead
the
expense.
ACL column. I knew we had that was here. I knew it was further to the right, but to the asset quality issues, right? And just kind of thinking about CECL. So again, you can sort the ACL or the percentage of delinquent loans or charge-offs. Again, high to low, low to high, but you can get a sense of where other credit unions in your state, kind of what they're seeing. So again, just a good contextual set of information that again, as you're thinking about your reserve, your own analysis, you can kind of directly see what other institutions are experiencing, and then also have an average and a median and a min and a max value for you as well. So
and you'll notice from here, just like with other areas of our platform, all the credit union names are links, are clickable. So let's say I click on one of them, this one, Water and Power Community in LA. I can get an overview, and this is the same thing. I can show you how to get this for your credit union, but you can also get it for any other credit union in the country that you would like. Actually, sure, I'll use it for them. It gives you an idea of where their branches are located, and you get a financial overview. where you can look at quarters, you can look at year-to-date periods for income-related or asset quality-related stuff, or you can look at years if I want to pull up the last few years. If I go with quarterly, and I can change my dates as well, I can get a feel for balance sheet, performance, fee income levels, overhead, loan mix, deposit mix, asset quality, and some yield and cost information too. So you want to take a look at yield on earning assets or yield on loans for your credit union or for your peers over time. You can track that using this tool, and it'll show your values and the peer group median values and what your percentile rank is within the peer group. And you can change the peer group by saying, I want all the $50 to $100 million credit unions in the state of California or in the Western region or in the entire country. And you can choose, if I choose, let's say peer group 4, as soon as I choose that, then this peer median value is going to change and the percentile rank is going to change. Obviously, your data over here is not going to change. And this is all exportable, just like everything else on the platform. One click to print it and have it fit attractively on a page. Single click PDF generation and Excel generation and everything else. But again, that's for your credit union or for any other credit union. To get to another credit union or search for a credit union, you don't have to go to the credit unions at a glance page and start scrolling through to find the credit union. You can just go to the advanced credit union search. And if you know a charter number off the top of your head, I'm probably the only one who sadly knows that. But you can start typing in, let's say, Maine. No, Power. So, oh yeah, that's right. It's not predictive. So if I type in the name Power and hit search, there's 21 credit unions that have the name Power in the name. You can search by name. You can search for the credit unions in a city or in a state or in a region or in an asset range if you'd like. And once you find the institution you're looking for, you can go ahead and click on it. And it's going to give you that financial overview. So it's a great way to just kind of bounce around and look at financial data on different credit unions and compare and contrast to peer data over time. Anything else on that, Sean?
No, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to
Excellent.
show everybody. So
I'll go ahead and stop sharing for now so we can.
Yeah.
I believe there were some slides that I had
Yeah.
right in the presentation where I kind of showed
Touched
that.
on these. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back to
Yeah.
those.
So here's the financial summary we started on. Here's the search that Steve just went through. So again, you'll get copies of these, but certainly encourage you to, again, just if you're curious about what other credit unions are doing for their reserve and what kind of experience they're seeing in past dues and charge-offs, good information kind of at your fingertips.
Yep.
And then as Steve pointed out, you can actually dive into a financial summary for any of the credit unions that in the country that we've got them all listed out, and with the ability to look at year-to-date data as well as annual and quarterly information. And as he touched on, compare that to multiple peer groups of your own selection.
Yep.
So secondly, an area where Steve's been spending a lot of time, and we've kind of introduced this over the last couple of months, is just additional information that we can glean from our users about what's happening with their CECL calculations and the ACL. And again, we don't want people to do things in a vacuum. So anywhere we think there's information that can be, helpful, insightful, contextual, we think there's real value in that. So we've begun that process this year and continue to work on it. And Steve's going to continue to kind of show you some of the information that we're seeing.
Yeah, and before we're going to talk about this in a second, but I gathered some more data just about the size of this database, because I think it's critical whenever you're doing this type of analysis, which is a very detailed level data. You're pulling segment level data for particular portions of your portfolio. And if you think about it, if you're trying to get a feel for how peers are trending in particular segments when it comes to things like losses, you need a very large data set for it to be meaningful, right? If you have a sample size of 4, you're going to get no helpful information whatsoever out of it. And that's true even more so for things like losses over time, because if you think about how your credit union experiences losses, they're not even and consistent throughout your portfolio over time, right? If you have a net charge-off ratio of 20 basis points, you don't have 20 basis points in losses in each segment of your portfolio. The vast majority of losses would come from one relationship or one segment at one given point in time. So most of your loss rates at the segment level are 0. even when your overall loss rate is much higher than zero. So the effect that this has when aggregating data into peer trends over time is you need a very large data set in order to get meaningful trends. And so luckily we have that, have that large data set now. And I don't have the screen to share it, but I'm going to share some of the numbers with you. Since we started, since we have, well, I guess not even since we started with the CECLSolver, but just since CECL went into play last year, since the beginning of 2023, we have over 450 unique credit unions actively using the CECLSolver tool, creating scenarios on a quarterly basis, over 450 of them now. And they come from 47 of the 50 states in the United States. So there's still, I don't think we have anyone from Alaska yet. I think we got Hawaii now, a couple states that we don't have any users, but a very wide and deep amount of data that we have from over 400 credit unions in over 47 states. They've run over 8,000 scenarios in the last year and a half. And if you look at segment level data, so all these data points you're looking at here are segment level warms, Q factors, and ACLs. And if you can believe it, we have over 110,000 data points for each of those values now for segment level warms, Q factors, and ACL. So that all that is to say that we have a great proprietary database now that we are confident reflects what's actually happening with your peers around the country when it comes to their warms at the segment level, Q factor trends for different types of loans, and reserve levels. And why we think that's so important is if you're just looking at the publicly available data where our CECLSolver, the engine for our CECL tool and our analytics platform is, you're never going to get any of this segment level data, and you're not calculating reserves at the aggregate, right? You have to calculate them and defend them at the segment level. So when you're in the thick of it, right, in the weeds with your examiner, fighting over a Q factor defense for a particular segment of your portfolio, your defense can't be that my total reserve is about where my peers are, therefore my Q factor for this particular segment should be fine. You need more details than that. You need more justification than that. So this type of data really can be, in my opinion, indispensable in helping guide directionally where your Q factors and reserves are headed for each segment of your portfolio, and where your peers are at. Another great benefit of this type of data is we don't have to wait till the call reports come in. So for all of our users who are doing these calculations in July, right? Doing your second quarter or your June 30th ACL calculations in July before we have the benefit of getting that most recent, call report data from around the country, then we don't have to wait for the call reports to come in to get this. As soon as July 1st comes around, we have all the scenarios that our users have created during the second quarter. So we know what that trend looks like in Q factors and reserve levels for your peers at the segment level as soon as the quarter's over. So that really, this becomes leading indicators that can help you justify reserves before even you have call report data from your peers out there to help justify. Does that make sense, Sean?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what we see here is, you've seen this chart before. This has been updated just this week with the second quarter with 2Q results, and we can get a feel for where warms are headed. This is for all the credit unions around the country. As this database continues to grow, one thing we're going to start offering very soon in the next couple of weeks is the ability to not just look at median values. If you want to get kind of a range of, hey, what's the 25th and 75th percentile for reserves for credit card loans for my peers or for used vehicle loans. So you're never, the goal of your reserve is not to perfectly match your peers. You have too much that's unique about your credit union, your risk profile, your local economy, your business model, your growth, history and everything else to justify that. But we all want to get a feel to know that if we're in kind of the range of where most of our peers are at. So the ability to not just look at a median without context, but also look at kind of a 25th and 75th percentile for these loss rates and for these Q factors, I think can be really helpful in your confidence level that you're on the right track. And sharing that with the board and sharing that with the with your examiners and auditors. So these are median values, and we can see that in the second quarter, warms, and we noticed this on the commercial bank side as well. Warms seem to be coming down a little bit. So your average remaining maturities declined a little bit across the board in the second quarter, not drastically, but noticeably. Q factors have at the median level, they're pretty low, right? Because when we look at and that's what I was alluding to earlier, when we're looking at median data at the segment level, most of your losses are going to come at one segment or another, and most of your segments are going to have zero. So when we median a large data set, we don't get huge Q factor adjustments, but we get a feel for where they're most significant, right? Used vehicle loans and vehicle loans in general are a little higher on the Q factor side, as well as credit card loans. And then finally, reserve levels. So we see some increasing and decreasing in the second quarter in reserve levels. A slight increase in reserves in credit card loans, an increase after a decrease in, I mean, you can see obviously payday alternative loans, much higher reserve levels than most, and unsecured loans have come down a little bit. So you can see how those trends diverge depending on the segment of the portfolio. The next page is just the other half of the it's a little bit less relevant for most, not all, but most credit unions. These are all the commercial loans. Now that, as you know, the call report is more detailed on the commercial loan segments, we're tracking all that as well. So for those of you who have any significant commercial loans, you can get all this data on the commercial loan side as well, and updated for 2Q. This data is available right now on this presentation. By either next Monday or the following Monday, that will be available on the CECLSolver in the knowledge base. And I'll show you guys what link where you can see this data on our site, updated quarterly, so you don't have to go find our old PowerPoint presentation and print it out. The next couple slides are some new functionality. We're wanting to add more to this. We feel like this database is really going to be helpful guidance for you guys moving forward. And so not only do we want you to be able to look at a range of percentiles against your peers, but also if you want to look geographically and just limit this to maybe the West Coast or the Southeast as opposed to nationally, or from an asset perspective. Now, perfectly honest, I haven't seen any really significant differences within credit unions as long as until the asset sizes get really, really, really large. But if you wanted to limit it to, credit unions under 200 million in assets, as opposed to, 500 million or 2 billion or $4 billion credit unions, which we do have as users, you'll be able to do that in the future. And we're working on that actively. But this is a way to get 25th percentile. Now, if we look at warms, 25th percentile warms are going to be, well, those are, a lot lower, right? We're looking at 1, 2, 3 years, even for mortgage loans, 4 or 5 years at the 25th percentile. Q factor adjustments at the 25th percentile, pretty low, pretty negligible. Reserve levels at the 25th percentile, they're in the 20, 50, 70 basis points. It depends on what segment of the portfolio we're looking at, but this will give you a range there. And if you go to one more slide down, there's 75th percentile. So we see some much longer warms at the 75th percentile. Unsurprisingly, we see some higher Q factor adjustments, right? And we see some significantly higher reserve levels at each segment when we're looking at 75th percentile data across our entire database. Any thoughts on what you're seeing there, Sean?
Yeah, I think, again, as Steve pointed out, right, our traditional starting point is always the median, right? So you can kind of know where the midpoint is. But we do think it's insightful, to dig into the peer percentiles a little bit more. And so, again, I think these are some of the areas where, you can just do a lot more with the data, and we're trying to, particularly if we think it can be insightful. And I think this does really kind of illustrate that, right? You can just see the difference between the 25th percentile, the median, and the 75th percentile. And so, I think added to that, the ability to do it geographically will hopefully even be even more insightful. And so
Geographically or size based, yeah, to an
precisely.
extent. Now, keep in mind that despite the very large size of a database now and the comfort we have in the statistics, the more you slice and dice it, right, the smaller your sample size gets. So where it's never going to be, it's never intended to be, well, I'd like to see all this data for 100 to $200 million credit unions in Alabama, right? There's not going to be enough. There's not going to be 250, 100 to $200 million credit unions in the state of Alabama. Even if we had every single one of them using our tool, there isn't enough. So we don't want that level of specificity because I don't think it's actually that meaningful.
Yeah.
But being able to look at a region and look in a large asset box and then look at it ranges will kind of dial in for your peers what they're really seeing out there in the marketplace with Q factors and reserve levels for different segments.
Yeah. And so again, Steve, maybe just one more time, remind everybody where they'll find this, on the CECLSolver from the live page. So
Yep.
it's going to be, be in your blue button, as Steve indicated. It won't be out there for till next week at the earliest, these additional pages, but it will show up where we've got the pure data information now on the knowledge base button. So,
all right. Go to the
so when you go into
CECL
CECLSolver, yeah.
Takes just a second to load up. All right. Click on my knowledge base here. And right here.
So yeah, the medians are there now. And then as Steve indicated, we'll update those for the second quarter, but then we'll also be adding the percentiles.
Yeah.
But those will not be there today.
Yeah.
But
the second quarter ones will be there on by Monday. And then up here, you'll have 3 green buttons. You'll be in a couple weeks, you'll be able to choose 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile. And at some point, we'll make it more dynamic where you can type in a percentile rank, or you can pick, West, South, or East region. Or you could say, I want, small credit unions, say under 200 million, or medium size, 200 to 750, or large credit unions, over $1 billion in assets. And you'll have those types of options. And I think that they could be very helpful in narrowing it down without narrowing it so much that your sample size shoots you in the foot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I hit the wrong button there. Go back to the presentation here. So again, some further industry trends that we just thought we'd share. Steve, take it away.
Sure. This is this very similar data to what we shared last month. It's nothing new. It's still March 31st, but we had a bit of a different audience today. We wanted to make sure everyone got a chance to see this. I'll go through them a little bit quicker because we did go through them last month, but we wanted to get a feel for one thing that always gets skewed in the data is when it comes to unfunded commitments. The majority of the majority of credit unions in the country are not reporting any reserve on their unfunded commitments. And that new line item that's in the liability side of your balance sheet, where that's new on the call report as of last year. There's, as you can see, 87%, as of the first quarter, 87% of the credit unions in the country that had some level of unfunded commitments were still reporting zero reserve for that unfunded commitments on the call report. And Sean will talk about, there's lots of reasons. There's no requirement that you have to have a certain number specifically in there. It's something that has to be evaluated, right? Your responsibility under CECL is to evaluate whether you think that there's any significant or meaningful, right, not negligible losses there in the unfunded commitments that you're not already somehow taking into account in some other way. And so, as you know, in our CECLSolver tool, we have a module for helping you estimate your reserves or losses on the unfunded commitments. But when people were asking us, well, I mean, what levels are typical, right? What levels for those people who are calculating and plugging in a reserve for their unfunded commitments, how much are they plugging in? So the first thing we did was just go look at the data. Well, I pulled up all 4,800 credit unions in the country and looked at median values for reserve levels for unfunded commitments. Guess what I found? Zero. I was like, I know it's not a lot, but zero seems a little bit low. So I looked at 75th percentile. I'm still getting zero. And what I realized is is that it was too heavily influenced by all the institutions that simply weren't reporting it. So what that means is, it doesn't mean that for those credit unions who are plugging in a reserve for unfunded commitments, they're plugging in zero. It means that 87% aren't plugging anything in. The 13% of credit unions that are calculating and plugging in a reserve for their unfunded commitments and sticking it on their call report, they're averaging, their median is 5 basis points on the total unfunded commitments. At the 75th percentile, it's 13 basis points. So still very low, but not completely insignificant. So I wanted to make sure that we understood what that second level kind of calculation is there. For those of you who are calculating a reserve on unfunded commitments, your peers are reporting typically 5 basis points to 10 basis points on the total unfunded commitment balance in that bucket. I hope that explanation makes sense for you guys.
Yeah, it does, Steve. And I think, again, I think part of the reason we wanted to illustrate this is twofold. Is one, Steve said, right, this is really, new to the ACL, or the ACL process. Two, there is a large majority, obviously, who are not reporting. And I think, for good reason, right? There's probably, for most institutions, immaterial risk here in the unfunded commitments, but the guidance does require that we at least evaluate it. I will say anecdotally, on the bank side of the world, right, the numbers come down. The percentage who are reporting zero, because the examiners have kind of asked why it's zero, and the banks have been forced to defend it. I don't think the credit union examiners are there yet. So I think, again, I agree that probably for most of you, zero is appropriate. But nevertheless, I think, just again, to share what we see, right? We have seen it come down pretty dramatically on the bank side. I don't know if it'll be to the same extent on the credit union side, but just
it was about
understand.
60 a year ago. About 60% of commercial banks were reporting nothing, and now it's 40% of commercial banks are reporting nothing. So it went from 40% to 60% of banks were calculating something there. For credit unions, it's gone from 9% to 13%. So yeah, same direction, but very incremental change.
Yeah. But we just, again, want you to be aware of, again, zero may be the right answer, but, again, on the bank side, at least, examiners have asked about it. I haven't had the same response from our credit unions telling us that their examiners have focused on it, but it may be something down the road in a year or two or three that, maybe there will be. I don't know, but again, we clearly have seen that take place on the bank side this year. All right, Steve, you want to continue talking through this?
Yeah. Yeah, just quickly here, we were curious. We wanted to look at some recent reserve trends for NCUA peer group 5. And so what we see here is total reserve to loans. So this is the entire ACL for the loan portfolio, collective and individually assessed, all added up together. And we can see that trend over time, that all the percentiles, including median and averages, have increased. Obviously, there was a big jump. If you look at the little trend lines on the right there, the biggest jump was, well, when we first started dealing with CECL, right? The first quarter of last year, the jump from 12/31 to 3/31, 2023. But even since then, it's continued to creep up. It's gone up about as much between when CECL started and now as between before CECL and when CECL started. About 10 basis point bump in reserves across the board when CECL was implemented, and about another 10 basis point bump since that incrementally over the last year. But we've seen it start to level off a little bit. As you can see, the median and the mean between 12/31 of last year and the first quarter of this year was flat for total reserve levels. We'll know about Q2 very soon. Now, we have our own proprietary data for about 10% of credit unions around the country, but for all the credit unions around the country, all 4,800 or so of you guys, it's leveled off in the last quarter or so. And this is data you can get yourself too, by the way, little plug. This was created from our Excel add-in tool. So if you're curious about crunching this type of data, pulling a huge amount of bank and credit union data directly into an Excel environment and doing analysis till your heart's content, We have a module for that that we can provide. We can walk you through how to do it. It would be a different product, but if that's something that interests you, we'd love to spend some time showing you how to create stuff like this, or even more attractive than this.
And or if there's something you'd like to, if you subscribe and there's reports you're trying to do, we'll certainly help you build them. So don't feel like you'll be on your own.
Yeah. And this was that first, the last page was for reserve levels. This is for credit quality, right? We wanted to get a feel for, from a call report stance, at least for all credit unions, what direction, let's say, past due loans, delinquent loans was headed. That's the first time where we get to see these loans having credit issues show up on the call reports across the country are in the delinquent loans. So we track them as well. There is certainly a significant element of seasonality to these delinquent loan rates. They tend to be highest at the end of the year, and they dip down at the beginnings of next year for lots of reasons. So I like to compare this data on a quarter to 4 quarters ago basis, right? As opposed to a linked quarter. So you can see here, all 4 quarters of 2023, delinquent loans increased. And then they dropped back down a little bit in the first quarter of 2024. But if you compare first quarter of this year to first quarter of last year, a significant increase, right? Median delinquent loans a year ago was 36 basis points. Median delinquent loans in the first quarter of this year, 49. So from 36 a year ago to 49. The average, or the mean, went from 48 to 65. And at the higher and lower percentiles, even a higher jump from first quarter of last year to this year. And this is all data that'll be updated a week from now or so, once we have everyone's call reports in for June 30th.
So Steve, we had a question came in. Is the increase maybe because examiners are now looking at the calculations? I think that could be it. I would suggest that they probably, some of the increase in reserves, really have kind of happened also as well, just to these numbers, right? I think CECL, and Steve touched on this last month, is designed to be forward looking. And so, the expectation is that we would be ahead of it, of the delinquencies, with our Q factors changing in the anticipation that there might be increased charge-offs. And so I think some of it is attributable to that. Steve, you want to?
That's why I like to go as far upstream as I can with good data, right? We can look at charge-offs and say, well, we haven't seen a significant increase in charge-offs, so why are we seeing higher reserves? Because such a large element of CECL, of reserve calculations or estimations, that it's still an estimate, no matter what they tell us. We're all still trying to project the future here. There's a much larger component of estimating for projecting the future. And so looking at delinquent loans that are starting to have problems but have not been charged off yet, is going to be a better indicator directionally of where reserves are going now, because reserves should be increasing further forward, right, in the business cycle under CECL than under, and that was part of the whole purpose of CECL, was to find a mechanism by which financial institutions would start increasing their reserves in advance of when it started to become a problem on the income statement because of charge-offs. All right, so just another reminder here. I guess did I already show? Yeah, I already showed that.
Yeah, we did show the knowledge base. Yeah, but this was, I forgot we were going to go here, but yeah, to that earlier question. So
just a reminder for everybody that that's where the newish knowledge base button is, where we've kind of consolidated all these different resources to help you guys along with your way. We will be having some video clips, links right on the individual tabs where they're most helpful. We're trying to give you guys more resources for if you have a detailed question or a conceptual question on a particular part of a tool. You don't have to go, open this book and go to page 400 to find the answer to it. You'll find the answers or the explanation to what your question is right where you have the question. So we're going to be putting some nice little short and sweet, which is of course not my forte, video clips on in different parts of a tool where it's most helpful. But on the next slide is just another reminder of how we've reorganized the knowledge base to have information about the tool. We've highlighted a couple recent or popular links within the knowledge base page the link on the left there, the tool updates and enhancements. That's something that sometimes when you're going through an audit or an exam and you're using a third-party tool, they're going to say, well, how has this tool changed since you started using it? And so this is a list of some of the larger enhancements that we've made to the tool since we started with it. It is, but just, and it mentions this in this document as well. There have been no material changes to the methodology and the calculation basis for our tool, right? We've made enhancements or additions to ways you can customize the outputs and additional ways that can help you in the analysis and in the justification of your or defense of it. But the primary basis, the way the tool works, the way the math works has not, and the way we do the calculations has not changed materially. So there haven't been any significant changes to the model, but kind of more bells and whistles, so to speak. So that's a list of those.
Yeah, making things less friction.
Yeah. The other highlight of the CECL peer data medians, that's we showed you guys a few minutes ago. That's going to be updated for 2Q on Monday, and then some percentile ranks soon after. On the audit functions, we've got that validation support document, which just discusses our role in validation. If you have questions about that, an update to our SOC report for those of you who are curious. We're always getting that updated each year, and that's just been updated again, so the new one's up there. Yeah, also, if the historical lifetime loss rate methodology sample, that doesn't use your data, that just uses some sample data to show you in a simple fashion how we do those calculations. And if you need more support than that, a real in an Excel version, we can help you with something more detailed than that if it comes to that. John?
Perfect. Just a couple of thank yous, right? Certainly, you all saw some survey emails over the past couple of weeks. These were some of the comments. We certainly appreciate people that they made these and shared those with us, and so we thought we'd put those up here today. But thank you for the kind words. Very much appreciated by all of our team here at Quick Rate. So thank you all very much for participating in the survey, but also for the very, very kind words. All right. We'll leave it open here just to see if there's any final questions. Or just a reminder of the YouTube page, again, can be found on the knowledge base button with the link into historical videos and replays of former webinars and coffee talks. Next month, given that we'll have fresh quarter data, we invited David Ruffin from IntelliCredit just to talk about what they're seeing on the IntelliCredit side in terms of credit findings that we're seeing in loan reviews, and just share again kind of an update with the second quarter call report numbers being finalized. Steve, anything before we let everybody have their Friday and off to the weekend?
I think that's about it for today. Hope everyone has a good weekend and gets time to relax. I'm going to try to do a little bit of fishing. Do not wish me good luck, Sean. Please, I'm just trying to get some peace and quiet out there on the pond, and I doubt I'll catch anything of significance.
Well, I'm sure it'll be fun. I hope it doesn't rain. And we thank you all for joining us. Certainly appreciate your commitment to joining us every month, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.